November 14, 1992. The Florida Everglades stretched endlessly under the humid morning sky, a maze of mangroves and waterways that had swallowed countless secrets over the decades. But on this particular Saturday, it would claim two more souls, creating a mystery that wouldn't be solved for 32 years. Before we begin the story, let us know in the comments which city you're watching from. We're really curious where you're tuning in from. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a rating. Travis Borgard checked his Timex watch as he loaded the last of the supplies into his weathered aluminum boat. 6 in the morning, right on schedule. The 28-year-old alligator hunter had been navigating these waters since he was a kid, following his father through channels that weren't on any tourist map. His sun-weathered hands moved with practiced efficiency, securing the gear while Pearl Jam played softly from his portable radio. "You sure about going out there today?" Carlos Patel called out from behind the counter of his bait shop. The 52-year-old owner of Glades Bait and Tackle had been up since 4, preparing for the weekend rush. "Weather Service says storms might roll in this afternoon." Travis waved him off with a grin. "Come on, Carlos. When have I ever let a little rain stop me? Besides, Brett's counting on this trip. Man needs the money bad." Brett Caldwell emerged from the shop's bathroom, zipping up his camouflage jacket despite the already oppressive heat. At 31, he was 3 years older than Travis, but had only recently started joining him on hunting expeditions. The construction business had dried up after Hurricane Andrew devastated South Florida just 2 months earlier, and Brett was desperate for any income he could find. "Got everything?" Brett asked, his voice tight with what Travis assumed was pre-hunt nerves. The man had only been on a handful of gator hunts, nothing like Travis's lifetime of experience. "Everything except your courage," Travis teased, loading a cooler filled with ice and Gatorade. The price tag from the local Winn-Dixie was still stuck to its side, $12.99, a week's worth of beer money for most folks in these parts. Carlos rang up their purchases on his ancient cash register, the mechanical bells chiming with each button press. "That'll be $47.50. You boys got your tags from Fish and Wildlife?" "Right here." Travis patted his vest pocket where the hunting permits were safely stored. "Everything by the book. Always. That's how his daddy had taught him, and that's how he operated. The Everglades might be wild, but there were still rules." As the two men prepared to leave, the shop's door chimed, and Tyler Hernandez walked in. The 26-year-old park ranger was already in his crisp uniform, ready for another day of patrol. His boyish face broke into a smile when he saw Travis. "Morning, Travis. Brett. Heading out early today?" "Early gator gets the fish," Travis replied, a saying that made no sense but had become their running joke over the years. "You working the whole weekend?" Tyler nodded, grabbing the cup of coffee from Carlos's ancient percolator. The price hadn't changed in 5 years. Still 75 cents, honor system with a mason jar for payment. Someone's got to keep the tourists from doing something stupid. Had a family yesterday wanted to feed marshmallows to a 12-footer. Can you believe that? Brett shifted impatiently near the door. "We should get going, Travis." "Want to beat the heat?" "Relax, man. Sun's barely up." But Travis grabbed his keys anyway, a Miami Dolphins keychain catching the fluorescent light. "Where are you patrolling today, Tyler?" "Eastern section mostly, though I might swing by the old Chickie platforms around noon, make sure nobody's camping illegally." Tyler took a long sip of his coffee. "You guys heading to your usual spots?" "Nah, thought we'd try something different today," Travis said. "Been seeing signs of big gators out near the deep mangroves, past Shark River Slough. Nobody goes out there much anymore." Tyler's expression shifted slightly, just a flicker of something Travis couldn't quite read. "That's pretty far out. You sure your boat can handle those channels? Gets pretty shallow in places." "Please," Travis scoffed. "I could navigate those waters blindfolded. Found a new cut-through last week. Saves about 30 minutes. Goes right past that old hunting cabin, the one from the 60s that's half collapsed." "Didn't know there was a cabin out there?" Tyler said, his voice casual but his eyes alert. "Yeah, it's hidden pretty good. Probably why it's still standing, more or less." Nobody to vandalize it. Travis headed for the door. Anyway, we'll be back before dark. Brett here turns into a pumpkin after sunset. Brett forced a laugh. Just being smart, these swamps get dangerous at night. Everything gets dangerous at night, Carlos said from behind his counter, organizing lottery tickets in their display. You boys be careful out there. And Travis, your mama called here yesterday looking for you. Said you haven't returned her calls. I'll call her when we get back, Travis promised, though they all knew how bad phone service was in this part of Florida. The nearest cell tower was 20 miles away, and most folks still relied on landlines and answering machines. Tyler finished his coffee and tossed the styrofoam cup in the trash. Well, I better start my rounds. You guys have a good hunt. Travis, if you see anything unusual out there, you know the drill. Yeah, report it to the proper authorities. Travis gave a mock salute. Yes, sir, Ranger Hernandez, sir. Tyler laughed and headed out, the door chiming again. Through the window, they watched him climb into his Park Service truck, a white Ford F-150 with the Everglades National Park logo on the door. The engine turned over with a reluctant growl. Government vehicles were always maintained on a shoestring budget. That boy takes his job too seriously, Carlos observed. Acts like he's protecting Yellowstone or something. He's all right, Travis said. Just young and eager. We were all like that once. Brett had already walked outside and was standing by Travis's truck, an aging Chevy S10 with more rust than paint. The boat trailer was hitched to the back, the aluminum boat gleaming in the early morning sun. Travis had spent yesterday afternoon cleaning it, making sure everything was perfect for today's hunt. Thanks, Carlos, Travis called out, grabbing a pack of Marlboro Lights from the counter display. Put it on my tab. Your tab's getting longer than my arm, Carlos grumbled, but made a note in his ledger anyway. Pay me when you sell them gators. Outside, the November air was thick with humidity, despite the early hour. The thermometer on Carlos's wall read 78 degrees, and it would likely hit 90 by noon. The weather service had been wrong about rain. The sky was cloudless, an endless expanse of pale blue. Travis's pager buzzed as he reached his truck. He checked the number, his ex-girlfriend, Stephanie. She'd been calling a lot lately, wanting to talk about getting back together. He'd deal with that drama later. Today was about hunting, making money, and forgetting about everything else for a while. You coming or what? Brett called out, already sitting in the passenger seat. Travis climbed in and started the engine. The radio came to life, Ace of Base's All That She Wants, filling the cab. Brett immediately changed the station, landing on a country channel playing Alan Jackson. My truck, my music, Travis said, switching it back. Whatever, man. Brett stared out the window as they pulled onto the narrow road that led to the boat launch. So, this new spot you found, nobody else knows about it? Told you, it's way off the beaten path. Found it by accident last week when I was tracking a big bull. Current had pulled my boat into this channel I'd never seen before. Followed it for about a mile and found this whole system of waterways. Gators everywhere, and I mean big ones, 12, 14-footers. And this cabin you mentioned? Yeah, weird thing. Looks like someone tried to fix it up recently. Fresh plywood on one wall, new lock on the door, but still basically fallen apart. Probably some kids using it as a party spot. Brett nodded, his fingers drumming nervously on his knee. His pager went off, and he quickly checked it, then shoved it back in his pocket. Everything okay? Travis asked. Yeah, just, creditors. They start calling early these days. Travis knew the feeling. Since Hurricane Andrew, half of South Florida was struggling financially. Insurance companies were slow to pay out, if they paid at all. Work was scarce. People were desperate. He'd been lucky that gator hunting was actually more profitable now. The storm had driven them into new areas, and confused gators were easier to catch. They reached the boat launch, a concrete ramp that descended into the dark water. A few other trucks were already there, early morning fishermen getting ready for their own expeditions. Travis recognized most of them. In a small community like this, everyone knew everyone. "Morning, Travis," called out Dale Patterson, a retiree who spent most of his pension on fishing gear. "Heard you found some new honey holes?" "Just rumors, Dale," Travis replied while backing the trailer down the ramp. "You know how people talk." "Well, if you see any good bass spots, let me know. Haven't caught nothing worth keeping in weeks." Travis got the boat in the water while Brett parked the truck. The engine started on the third pull, puttering to life with a cloud of blue smoke. Two-stroke engines were finicky, but this old Johnson had been with Travis for years. He knew all its quirks, how to coax it to life on cold mornings, how to keep it running in the shallow waters where modern engines would clog with vegetation. Brett climbed aboard, nearly losing his balance as the boat rocked. "Jesus, these things are unstable." "You get used to it," Travis said, guiding them away from the launch. "Just remember what I told you. Low center of gravity, no sudden movements, and always know where the gators are before you stand up." They headed into the maze of waterways, the launch disappearing behind them within minutes. The mangroves pressed in on both sides, their roots extending into the water like gnarled fingers. Birds erupted from the branches as they passed. Herons, egrets, the occasional inhinga spreading its wings to dry. Travis navigated by memory and instinct, reading the subtle signs that most people would miss. The way the water moved here, the color of the vegetation there. His father had taught him that the Everglades was a living thing, always changing, and you had to learn to read its moods. "How much further?" Brett asked after they'd been traveling for 40 minutes. "Another 20 minutes to the new spot. Want to stop and try the usual places first, or go straight there?" "Straight there," Brett said quickly. "Might as well check out this secret spot of yours." Travis steered them deeper into the wilderness. They passed the remnants of an old fishing camp, abandoned in the 70s when the Park Service expanded the protected areas. A rusted Coca-Cola sign still hung from one tree, barely readable through decades of weathering. The price advertised, ice-cold Coke, 25 cents, seemed impossibly quaint now. "You know," Travis said, having to raise his voice over the engine noise, "my granddad used to tell stories about this part of the Glades. Said during Prohibition, runners would bring booze through here from Cuba. Had a whole network of hidden channels and storage spots." "That's so?" Brett seemed interested for the first time all morning. "Yeah. Said there were cabins all through here where they'd hide the goods. Most got destroyed by hurricanes or just rotted away. But every now and then someone finds an old bottle or something. Guy over in Homestead found a whole case of Cuban rum last year. Sold it to a collector for $5,000. $5,000? For old booze? Right? Crazy what people will pay for. But that's Miami money for you. Different world over there." They continued deeper, the channels narrowing. Travis had to slow down several times to navigate around fallen trees and sandbars. The water was murky, tannin-stained from decomposing vegetation. Occasionally, they'd see the telltale ripples of a gator sliding into the water, warned of their approach by the engine noise. There, Travis pointed ahead. "See that break in the mangroves? That's the new channel." It was barely visible, just a gap in the vegetation that looked like shadow from a distance. Travis expertly guided them through, branches scraping against the aluminum hull. The channel was narrow, maybe 8 feet wide, with barely enough room to turn around. "You sure about this?" Brett asked, ducking as a low branch passed overhead. "Trust me." Travis kept his eyes forward, reading the water. "Gets wider in a minute." He was right. The channel opened into a hidden lagoon surrounded by towering mangroves. The water was darker here, deeper. And there, on the far bank, partially hidden by vegetation, was the cabin. It was in worse shape than Travis remembered. The structure, probably built in the 60s judging by the style, was listing to one side. The tin roof was rusted through in places, and vines had claimed most of the walls. But someone had definitely been here recently. A blue tarp covered one section of the roof, and there was a new padlock on the door, though the door itself was rotting off its hinges. "Weird place for a cabin," Brett observed. "Probably some old hunter's camp. Or maybe connected to those smuggling routes my granddad talked about. Travis cut the engine, letting them drift. Listen. The silence was profound. No traffic noise, no planes overhead, just the sounds of the swamp. Insects buzzing, birds calling, the gentle lap of water against their hull. And then a splash. A big gator, maybe 50 feet away, had just taken something from the surface. "That's what we're here for," Travis grinned. "Look at the size of that wake. Gotta be a 12-footer at least." Brett wasn't looking at the gator. His eyes were fixed on the cabin. "Maybe we should check it out. Could be something valuable in there." "Are you crazy? That's breaking and entering. Plus, look at it. Probably full of snakes and spiders. Maybe a homeless camp." "Come on, just a quick look. What if there's more of that prohibition booze? You said yourself it could be worth thousands." Travis shook his head. "We're here to hunt gators, Brett. Not go treasure hunting in some moldy old cabin." But Brett had already grabbed the pole they used to push through shallow water and was guiding them toward the bank. "5 minutes. Just want to peek through the windows." "This is stupid," Travis muttered, but didn't stop him. Truth was, he was a little curious too. The new lock was odd. Why would someone bother securing a falling-down shack in the middle of nowhere? They tied the boat to a sturdy mangrove root, the knot one Travis's father had taught him. Quick to tie, quick to release if they needed to leave in a hurry. The bank was soft, their boots sinking into the muck with each step. Travis noticed footprints, partially filled with water but still visible. Someone had been here within the last few days. "Brett, I don't like this. Someone's been here recently." "So, probably just kids drinking beer." Brett was already at the cabin, peering through a gap in the boards that covered one window. "Can't see much. It's dark in there." Travis joined him reluctantly. Up close, the cabin was even more deteriorated. The wood was soft with rot, and the whole structure seemed to be held together by the vines that covered it. But that lock was definitely new, a master lock, the kind you could buy at any hardware store for $10. "Let's go," Travis said. "This is giving me the creeps." Wait, Brett was examining the doorframe. "Look at this." There were scratches in the wood around the lock, fresh ones, like someone had tried to pry it open recently. And there, on the ground, was a cigarette butt, Marlboro, just like the pack in Travis's pocket, but the filter was a different color, Marlboro red, not his lights. A sound made them both freeze. An engine, distant but getting closer. "Someone's coming," Travis whispered. "We need to go, now." They scrambled back to the boat, Travis's hands shaking as he untied the rope. The engine seemed impossibly loud as he started it, the pull cord refusing to catch on the first 2 tries. Finally, it roared to life, and he gunned it, sending them shooting back into the channel just as another boat appeared in the lagoon. It was Tyler's Park Service boat. The ranger pulled alongside them, his expression unreadable behind his Ray-Ban aviators. "Travis? Brett? What are you guys doing back here?" "Hunting," Travis said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Like we said, following a big gator." Tyler looked past them toward the cabin, then back. "This is restricted area. Didn't you see the signs?" "What signs?" Travis genuinely hadn't seen any. "Must have fallen down in the last storm," Tyler said after a pause. "Happens all the time. Look, you guys need to clear out. This whole section is off limits. Habitat restoration project." Since when? Travis had never heard of any restoration project in this area. "Couple months now. Paperwork probably hasn't made it to Carlos's shop yet. You know how slow the federal government is." Tyler's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Come on, I'll escort you back to the main channel. Don't want you getting lost." They had no choice but to follow. Travis noticed Tyler kept looking back toward the cabin as they left, and his hand rested on his radio like he was thinking about calling something in. The journey back was tense and silent. Tyler followed them all the way to the main channel before peeling off with a wave. "Y'all be safe now. Stick to the marked areas." "That was weird," Brett said once Tyler was out of earshot. "Yeah," Travis was thinking. Since when is that area restricted? I was there last week. Maybe we should tell someone. Tell them what? That we were trespassing in a restricted area? Travis shook his head. No thanks. But something's definitely off. They spent the rest of the day half-heartedly hunting in the usual spots, but neither of their minds was really on it. They managed to catch 2 medium-sized gators, enough to make the trip worthwhile financially. But Travis couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. It was nearly 5 o'clock when they headed back to the launch. The sun was getting low, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Other boats were coming in too, the day trippers and fishermen calling it quits before dark. Shane Mueller was at the marina when they arrived, working on one of his rental boats. The 35-year-old marina owner looked up as they pulled in, his weathered face breaking into what seemed like a forced smile. "Travis, heard you boys had some trouble today. Tyler mentioned he had to escort you out of a restricted area." News traveled fast in small communities. "Just a misunderstanding," Travis said. "Didn't see any signs." "Yeah, well, you gotta be careful. Rangers are cracking down lately. Some environmental groups been raising hell about habitat protection." Shane helped them tie up the boat. "Good catch today?" "Not bad," Brett answered, gesturing to the gators in the boat. "Couple 100 pounds total." "Better than nothing in this economy." Shane's own business had been struggling. The hurricane had destroyed half his rental fleet, and insurance was fighting him on the claims. "You boys selling to Jimmy?" Jimmy was the local processor who bought gators for their hides and meat. "Yeah, heading there now." "Tell him I said hey. And Travis, maybe stick to the regular channels from now on. Safer that way." There was something in Shane's tone that made Travis look at him sharply, but the marina owner had already turned away, focusing on his engine repair. They loaded the boat back onto the trailer and headed to Jimmy's processing facility, a cinder block building on the outskirts of town that always smelt faintly of death despite the industrial fans running 24/7. Jimmy paid them in cash, as always, $340, split between them. Not bad for a day's work, but not great either. "Want to grab a beer?" Brett asked as they left. "Nah, I'm beat, and I told my mom I'd call her." Travis dropped Brett off at his apartment, a run-down complex that had seen better days even before the hurricane. "I'll call you later this week about going out again." "Yeah, sure." Brett seemed distracted, checking his pager again. "Hey, Travis, that cabin today? Maybe we should check it out again, when Tyler's not around." "Forget about the cabin, Brett. It's not worth the trouble." But as Travis drove home, he couldn't forget about it. The new lock, the fresh footprints, Tyler's reaction. Something was happening out there in the deep mangroves, something people didn't want discovered. His answering machine was blinking when he got home, the red light indicating 3 messages. The first was his mother, reminding him about Sunday dinner. The second was Stephanie wanting to talk. The third made him freeze. Travis. The voice was disguised, muffled somehow. "Stay away from the cabin. Stay away from the deep channels. This is your only warning." He played it again, trying to recognize the voice, but it was too distorted. The timestamp showed it had been left at 2:17 p.m. Right around the time Tyler had found them at the cabin, Travis picked up his phone and started to dial Brett's number, then stopped. The warning had been clear. But Travis had never been good at taking warnings. It was a flaw his father had always pointed out, this inability to leave well enough alone. He grabbed a beer from his fridge, a Budweiser that had been there since before the hurricane, and sat on his back porch. The Everglades stretched out behind his property, dark and mysterious in the fading light. Somewhere out there was that cabin, holding its secrets. Tomorrow, he decided. Tomorrow he'd go back, earlier this time, before anyone else was out. He'd find out what was really going on. What could be so important about a falling-down shack that someone would threaten him over it? The decision made, Travis felt better. He called his mother, assured her he was fine, promised to be at dinner on Sunday. He even called Stephanie back, though that conversation went nowhere productive. She wanted commitment. He wanted freedom. Same old story. As he got ready for bed, Travis set his alarm for 4 a.m. He'd be at the cabin by sunrise, have plenty of time to investigate before Tyler started his patrol. He'd take his camera, the Polaroid his sister had given him last Christmas, document whatever he found. The last thing he did before turning off the light was check his hunting vest, making sure his permits were still in the pocket. His fingers brushed against something else, a folded piece of paper he didn't remember putting there. He pulled it out and unfolded it. It was a hand-drawn map showing the channels leading to the cabin. But there were other markings too, symbols he didn't recognize, and dates. November 15th was circled in red, tomorrow's date. Travis stared at the map, his mind racing. How had this gotten in his pocket? When? The only people who'd been close enough were Brett, Carlos, and... The phone rang, startling him. He answered on the second ring. Travis? It was Brett, and he sounded scared. Man, we need to talk about today, about the cabin. I know what's going on out there. What do you mean you know? Not over the phone. Meet me at the launch tomorrow morning, early, like 5 a.m. I'll explain everything. And Travis? Bring a gun if you have one. The line went dead. Travis stood there holding the receiver, the dial tone buzzing in his ear. Outside, a screech owl called, its cry eerily human in the darkness. He looked at the map again, at the circled date, at the mysterious symbols. Tomorrow, November 15th, 1992. Whatever was going to happen, it was going to happen tomorrow. Travis barely slept that night. Every sound outside his window made him jump. The rustle of palm fronds, the distant splash of something in the canal behind his house, the hum of mosquitoes against the screen. At 3:30, he gave up and got out of bed. He made instant coffee, Maxwell House that tasted like burnt rubber but did the job. While it cooled, he loaded his father's old Remington 870 shotgun, the weight of it reassuring in his hands. Florida law allowed you to carry a firearm for protection against gators, and after last night's phone call, Travis figured he might need protection from more than just reptiles. The drive to the boat launch was surreal in the pre-dawn darkness. No other cars on the road, just the occasional possum or armadillo caught in his headlights. The radio played softly. Boys to Men's End of the Road, fading into a commercial for a mattress store having a hurricane relief sale. Everything must go, damaged or not. Brett's truck was already at the launch when Travis arrived, parked under the single streetlight that still worked. Brett was sitting on the tailgate, smoking nervously, the cherry of his cigarette glowing in the darkness. "You came," Brett said, stubbing out the cigarette. "You said you knew what was going on. Start talking." Brett looked around nervously, even though they were completely alone. "Remember when I said I needed money? It's worse than you know. I owe some people, bad people, the kind who break legs first and ask questions later." "Jesus, Brett, how much?" 15 grand. Started as 5, but the interest." Brett shrugged helplessly. "After the hurricane, I couldn't work, couldn't pay. They gave me an ultimatum. Either I help them with something, or they take it out of my hide." Travis felt a cold dread settling in his stomach. The cabin? It's a drop point, has been for months. Cocaine coming up from Colombia, through the Keys, then distributed through the Everglades. That cabin is where they store it before it gets moved to Miami. And you brought me there? I didn't mean to. I was supposed to check on a shipment yesterday, make sure it was secure, but I couldn't go alone. It would look suspicious. So I asked to go hunting with you, figured I'd steer us in that direction, take a quick look while you weren't paying attention. Brett's voice was desperate. But then you found that new channel on your own, and we ended up right there. And then Tyler showed up. Tyler's involved? I don't know. Maybe. Probably. Someone in the Park Service has to be. How else could they operate without getting caught? Travis's pager buzzed. He checked it. A number he didn't recognize, followed by 911, emergency. "That's them," Brett said. "They've been paging me all night. They know something went wrong yesterday. They know we were at the cabin. We need to go to the police." "With what proof? And you think the local cops aren't on their payroll? Travis, half this county is struggling to put food on the table. You don't think a few $1,000s here and there buys a lot of looking the other way?" A pair of headlights appeared in the distance, moving fast. Both men tensed, but it was just a newspaper delivery van, tossing the morning edition of the Miami Herald into the box by the marina office. The headline was visible even in the dim light. "Clinton wins presidency." "So what do we do?" Travis asked. "We go back to the cabin. They want me to retrieve something from the last shipment, a package that wasn't supposed to be there. If I don't get it, they'll know I'm compromised, and then we're both dead." "Both? I'm not involved in this." "You are now. The moment you saw that cabin, you became a liability. Why do you think they called your house last night?" Travis wanted to argue, but he knew Brett was right. In the world of drug trafficking, witnesses were problems, and problems got solved permanently. "Fine. We go get your package. Then what?" "Then we disappear for a while. I've got a cousin in Georgia. We can stay there until this blows over." It was a terrible plan, but Travis couldn't think of a better one. They loaded into his boat as the eastern sky began to lighten, a pale pink glow on the horizon. The water was calm, like glass, reflecting the fading stars. They didn't talk as they navigated the channels. There was nothing to say. Travis kept the shotgun within reach, though he wondered what good it would do against drug dealers with automatic weapons. The weight of it was more psychological comfort than practical protection. The mangroves were still in shadow when they reached the hidden channel. Travis cut the engine earlier this time, using the pole to push them silently through the narrow passage. Every bird call made them freeze. Every ripple in the water seemed like a threat. The cabin looked different in the dawnlight, more ominous somehow, squatting there among the mangroves like some prehistoric creature. The blue tarp on the roof flapped gently in the morning breeze. "The package is supposed to be under the floorboards," Brett whispered, "southeast corner wrapped in plastic." They tied up and approached carefully. The padlock was gone, the door slightly ajar. Travis's grip tightened on the shotgun. "Someone's been here," he said. "Maybe they already got it. Maybe we can just leave." But even as Brett said it, they both knew that wasn't an option. They'd been told to retrieve the package. Returning empty-handed wasn't acceptable. Travis pushed the door open with the barrel of the shotgun. The hinges screamed in protest, the sound impossibly loud in the morning quiet. Inside, the cabin was a single room, maybe 12 by 12 feet. The floor was rough planking, gaps between the boards showing the dark water below. In one corner was an old cot with a moldy mattress. Empty beer cans and food wrappers littered the floor. Doritos, Snickers bars, the detritus of someone's stakeout meals. "Southeast corner," Brett repeated, moving toward it. Several floorboards had been pried up recently, the exposed nails bent and rusty. Brett knelt and reached into the gap, feeling around in the darkness below. "Got something." He pulled out a package wrapped in black plastic and duct tape, about the size of a shoebox, but heavier. Something shifted inside when he moved it. "That doesn't feel like cocaine," Travis said. "I don't know what it is. I'm just supposed to deliver it." Brett stood up, cradling the package. "Let's get out of here." They were halfway to the door when they heard the engine. Not the steady putt-putt of a fishing boat, but the aggressive roar of an airboat, coming fast. "Hide it," Travis hissed, but there was nowhere to hide anything in the bare cabin. The airboat burst into the lagoon, its fan throwing spray everywhere. 3 men were on board, all armed. Travis recognized one of them, Miguel Santos, a local with a reputation for violence. The other 2 were strangers, Miami muscle by the look of them. "Well, well," Miguel called out, cutting the engine. "The hunters, right on time." "We got what you wanted," Brett said, holding up the package. "Good, bring it here." Brett started toward the door, but Travis grabbed his arm. Something was wrong. Miguel was smiling, but it wasn't a relieved smile. It was the smile of a cat that had cornered a mouse. "Both of you, come out where we can see you." They had no choice. Travis left the shotgun inside. Reaching for it would be suicide. They walked out onto the rickety dock that extended from the cabin over the water. The morning sun was just breaking through the mangroves, painting everything gold. "You know what's in that package?" Miguel asked. "No," Brett said, "and we don't want to know. Just take it and we're done." "Open it." "Miguel, come on." "Open it." Brett's hands shook as he tore at the plastic. Inside was another wrapped bundle, this one in clear plastic. But it wasn't cocaine. Travis could see that immediately. It was cash, lots of it, $100 bills in neat stacks. "That's our payment from the Colombians," Miguel said. $250,000. And you know what? It was supposed to disappear. Tragic accident. Boat explosion maybe, or a gator attack. 2 hunters go missing in the Everglades, bodies never found. Meanwhile, that money gets reported as lost in the accident. Insurance covers the Colombians' loss. We keep the cash. Everyone wins. "Except us," Travis said, understanding flooding through him. "Except you." Miguel raised his gun, a black semi-automatic that looked huge in his hand. Nothing personal, just business. That's when Tyler's Park Service boat rounded the corner. The ranger took in the scene in an instant, the armed men, Travis and Brett on the dock, the package of money. His hand went to his service weapon. "Park Service, everyone freeze!" What happened next was chaos. Miguel swung his gun toward Tyler. Brett dove for the water. Travis lunged backward toward the cabin and his shotgun. Gunfire erupted. The sharp crack of pistols mixed with the boom of Travis's Remington. When the smoke cleared, Miguel was floating face down in the water. One of the Miami men was slumped over the airboat seat. The other had his hands up, surrendering. Brett was nowhere to be seen. Tyler was still in his boat, his weapon trained on the surrendering man. But something was off about his posture, the way he held himself. "Brett," Tyler called out, "you can come out, it's over." And that's when Travis understood. Tyler hadn't stumbled onto this scene by accident. He'd been waiting, watching. He'd known exactly when to appear. Brett's head broke the surface near the mangroves, gasping for air. He'd been under for nearly a minute, hiding among the roots. He swam to the dock and pulled himself up, coughing and spitting water. "You okay?" Tyler asked, but his eyes never left the surviving gunman. "Yeah," Brett gasped. "Yeah, I'm good." Travis lowered the shotgun, his mind racing. "You're working together." Tyler finally looked at him, and there was something cold in his eyes. "You should have stayed away, Travis. I tried to warn you. The signs, the phone call, why couldn't you just leave it alone?" "You're a cop?" "DA," Tyler admitted, "undercover for 2 years, working to bust this ring. Brett's my informant, has been for 6 months." "So this whole thing was supposed to go down differently. Brett was going to lead them here, we'd arrest them with the drugs and money, case closed. But you complicated things by finding this place on your own. Suddenly there were too many variables. You could have told me? And risk you acting differently, alerting them somehow? No, safer to keep you in the dark." Tyler pulled out his radio. "This is Agent Hernandez. I need backup at grid reference 779. Multiple suspects down, 1 in custody." The radio crackled with responses. Soon, the lagoon would be swarming with federal agents, real Park Service rangers, maybe even Coast Guard. The quiet sanctuary would become a crime scene. "What happens to me?" Travis asked. "You were never here," Tyler said. "As far as the report goes, Brett let us here alone. You're a ghost, but that means you can never talk about this. Ever. Not to your family, not to your friends, not to anyone. Understood?" Travis nodded. What choice did he have? As they waited for backup, Travis noticed something. The package of money was gone. In the chaos of the shooting, it had disappeared. He looked at Brett, who was wringing out his shirt, carefully not making eye contact. Tyler was focused on securing the prisoner. Neither of them mentioned the missing money. The backup arrived within 20 minutes. Boats full of agents wearing DEA windbreakers, crime scene techs, even a medical examiner. Travis was quietly escorted away by an agent who drove him home and made him sign a stack of confidentiality agreements. "You never saw anything," the agent repeated. "You went hunting alone yesterday. Came home early because the gators weren't biting. That's your story for the rest of your life." The news reported it differently, of course. According to the Miami Herald, a routine Park Service patrol had stumbled onto a drug deal gone wrong. 2 dealers dead, 1 arrested, major cocaine ring disrupted. Tyler was mentioned as the heroic ranger who called for backup. Brett wasn't mentioned at all. Travis tried to return to normal life. He went hunting, worked his tours, had dinner with his mother that Sunday as promised. But something had changed. The Everglades, which had always been his sanctuary, now felt different. Every shadow could hide a threat. Every stranger could be cartel. 3 weeks after the incident, Travis ran into Shane at the gas station. The marina owner looked nervous, kept glancing around as they talked. "Heard you've been staying away from the deep channels," Shane said. "Yeah, well, gators aren't biting out there anyway." "Smart man." Shane paused at his truck. "You know, Travis, sometimes it's better not to know things. Safer. For everyone." It was a warning, Travis realized. Shane knew something, or suspected it. How many others in town were aware of what had really happened out there? Brett disappeared a month later. Official story was he'd moved to Atlanta for work. Travis heard different rumors. Witness protection, a shallow grave in the swamp, living under a new name in Mexico. He never found out which was true. Tyler finished his assignment and transferred out, supposedly to a ranger position in Yellowstone. His replacement was a cheerful older man who knew nothing about the hidden channels and secret cabins. The cabin itself was destroyed in a controlled burn, officially part of that habitat restoration project Tyler had mentioned. Nothing remained but scorched ground and the concrete pillars that had held it above the waterline. Travis kept hunting for another year, but his heart wasn't in it anymore. Every time he passed the entrance to that hidden channel, now blocked with fallen trees, he remembered. The money, the gunfire, the bodies floating in the dark water. He finally sold his boat and moved to Orlando, got a job at Disney World of all places, operating the Jungle Cruise ride. It was a sanitized version of the wilderness he'd once loved, all the danger removed, everything controlled and safe. Tourists laughed at his jokes about the backside of water and the sleeping zebras that were actually okapis. Sometimes, late at night in his apartment, Travis would think about that missing money, $250,000, enough to change someone's life forever. He wondered if Brett had taken it, if that had been the plan all along. Or maybe Tyler had pocketed it, payment for 2 years of dangerous undercover work. Or maybe it had simply sunk into the dark water of the lagoon, one more secret swallowed by the Everglades. The investigation into the drug ring continued for months. More arrests were made, including several local officials who'd been paid to look the other way. The stories that emerged painted a picture of a vast network, cocaine moving through the swamps like water through the aquifer, invisible but ever present. But those were just the stories that made it to the newspapers. Travis suspected there was much more that never came to light. The Everglades had always been a place of secrets, from the Seminole hiding from the army to bootleggers running rum. Now it was cocaine and money laundering, but the principle was the same. The swamp kept its secrets. Years passed. Travis married a girl from work, had kids, bought a house in the suburbs. He taught his children to swim in the community pool, not in the canals and lagoons of his youth. They visited the Everglades as tourists, taking airboat rides with guides who followed prescribed routes, never venturing into the real wilderness. Sometimes Travis would see news stories about drug busts in South Florida, and he'd wonder if they were connected to that network from 1992. The names changed, but the game remained the same. There was too much money involved for it to ever really stop. He lost track of most people from those days. Carlos sold the bait shop and retired. Shane's marina went bankrupt after another hurricane. The town itself slowly died, eaten away by development and environmental regulations, until it was just another suburb of Miami's sprawl. But Travis never forgot that morning in the mangroves. The weight of the shotgun in his hands. The sound of gunfire echoing off the water. The way the money had simply vanished, as if it had never existed at all. On his 50th birthday, Travis received a postcard. No return address, postmarked from Costa Rica. The picture showed a pristine beach, palm trees, the kind of place people dreamed of retiring to. On the back, in handwriting he didn't recognize, were just 4 words. "Thanks for the hunting lessons." He never found out who sent it. The official records of the incident were sealed, part of an ongoing federal investigation that seemed to have no end. Freedom of Information Act requests came back redacted to the point of uselessness, black bars covering everything but the date and location. And then, in November 2024, 32 years after that morning in the mangroves, Hurricane Rafael tore through South Florida. Among the damage was the complete destruction of what remained of the old hunting grounds. The storm surge pushed saltwater deep into the Everglades, killing vegetation, reshaping channels, and erasing decades of human impact. But it also revealed things long hidden. A group of storm damage assessors documenting the destruction for FEMA made an unexpected discovery. In an area that had been off-limits for decades, the hurricane had exposed the ruins of several structures. Not just cabins, but an entire network of hidden buildings, connected by raised walkways that had been invisible from water level. Among the debris, they found evidence of the old drug network, packaging materials with Colombian labels, rusted weapons, even a logbook that had somehow survived, wrapped in plastic and hidden in a wall. The entries went back to 1989 and forward to 1993, detailing shipments, payments, and personnel. 3 names appeared frequently in the ledger: Miguel Santos, deceased, Tyler Hernandez, whereabouts unknown, and Brett Caldwell, whereabouts unknown. But it was the final entry that caught investigators' attention. Dated November 16, 1992, the day after the shootout. Package recovered by TH, pipeline compromised, relocating operations, cleanup completed. Package recovered by TH, Tyler Hernandez. The DEA, when questioned, claimed to have no record of an agent Tyler Hernandez. The Park Service had employed a ranger by that name, but their records showed he'd transferred to Wyoming in December 1992. Wyoming had no record of him ever arriving. The revelation sparked a new investigation. The cabin Travis had found wasn't just a drop point. It was the center of a massive operation, one that someone had gone to great lengths to hide. The shootout hadn't ended the network. It had simply caused it to evolve, to burrow deeper. Bank records from 1992 were subpoenaed. Brett Caldwell had indeed declared bankruptcy in September of that year. But in January 1993, he'd purchased a house in Costa Rica. Cash sale. The amount? $247,000. Tyler Hernandez had no bank records after November 1992. He'd simply ceased to exist, at least under that name. Travis, now retired and living in Gainesville, was contacted by federal investigators. He stuck to his story. He'd gone hunting alone that day, came home early. He knew nothing about any drug operation. The agents didn't believe him, but without proof, there was nothing they could do. "Statute of limitations has run out anyway," one agent told him. "Even if you were involved, which we're not saying you were, it's ancient history now. We're more interested in where Hernandez and Caldwell are now." Travis genuinely didn't know, and said so. But that night, he dug out an old photo album from a box in his garage. There, tucked between pictures of fishing trips and family barbecues, was a Polaroid he'd taken that morning before everything went wrong. It showed his boat at the dock, the Everglades stretching out behind it, peaceful and pristine. In the corner of the photo, barely visible, was the corner of another boat. Tyler's Park Service boat, though you'd have to know what you were looking for to recognize it. He'd arrived before the shootout, been there, waiting, the whole time. Travis stared at the photo for a long time, then fed it into his shredder. Some secrets were better left buried, even if hurricanes and time conspired to expose them. The investigation into the newly discovered ruins continued for months. More bodies were found, victims from the early 90s whose disappearances had never been solved. The drug network had been more extensive and violent than anyone had realized. A pattern emerged from the evidence. The network had used Park Service credentials to move freely through protected areas. They'd had inside information about patrol schedules, planned raids, everything. Someone in law enforcement had been feeding them information. The DEA quietly opened an internal investigation into operations from that period. Several retired agents were questioned. Most claimed not to remember details from cases 30 years old. A few mentioned Tyler Hernandez, remembered him as a solid undercover agent who'd burned out after a tough assignment. "Happens sometimes," one retired supervisor said. "Guys go so deep undercover they forget which side they're on, or they realize there's more money in crime than in stopping it." The supervisor's notes from 1992 were retrieved from storage. They showed growing concern about Agent Hernandez in the months leading up to November. Missed check-ins, unexplained absences, requests for money that seemed excessive for his cover identity. The final note, dated November 20, 1992, "Agent Hernandez has been relocated to witness protection following successful operation. Case closed." But there was no witness protection file for Tyler Hernandez. No records of relocation, no new identity papers, nothing. He'd simply vanished, along with $250,000 in drug money. The Miami Herald ran a series of articles about the discoveries, calling it one of the largest corruption cases in DEA history. The story went national, picked up by CNN and the major networks. Everyone wanted to know, where were Tyler Hernandez and Brett Caldwell now? Tips poured in from across the country, supposed sightings of the two men. None panned out. The trail was too cold, the men too careful. If they were still alive, they'd had 30 years to perfect their disappearance. Travis watched the coverage from his living room, his wife beside him. "Crazy story," she said. "To think that was happening right where you used to hunt." "Yeah," Travis agreed. "Crazy." She looked at him sideways. "You okay? You seem tense." "Just remembering those days. It was a different time." "Did you ever meet either of them, Hernandez or Caldwell?" Travis was quiet for a long moment. "Maybe. Lot of people pass through that area. Hard to remember everyone." His wife accepted the answer, but Travis could feel her watching him for the rest of the evening. That night, unable to sleep, Travis went onto his computer and searched for property records in Costa Rica. It took some digging, but he found it. A Brett Caldwell had indeed purchased property there in 1993. The property had been sold in 2001 to a corporation based in Panama. The corporation's registered owner was listed as T. Henderson. T.H. Travis cleared his browser history and shut down the computer. The next morning, he called his son in California. They talked about the grandkids, the weather, normal things. At the end of the call, his son mentioned something odd. Hey Dad, weird thing. Got a call yesterday from someone asking about you. Said he was an old hunting buddy from Florida. Wanted to reconnect. Tyler something. I told him I'd pass along the message, but the guy hung up before giving me his number. Travis's blood went cold. If he calls again, don't give him any information. Just hang up. Dad, is everything okay? Everything's fine. Just some people from those days, it's better to leave the past in the past. After hanging up, Travis went to his garage and retrieved his father's old shotgun from the safe. He cleaned it, loaded it, placed it in his bedroom closet within easy reach. Maybe he was being paranoid. Maybe Tyler, if it really was Tyler, just wanted to ensure Travis would keep quiet. Or maybe loose ends from 30 years ago were finally being tied up. Either way, Travis would be ready. The investigation continued, making headlines for months. More evidence emerged from the hurricane damage, weapons caches, drug packaging facilities, even what appeared to be a graveyard of people who'd crossed the network. The scope kept expanding, reaching into local government, law enforcement, even the federal agencies tasked with stopping drug trafficking. But Tyler Hernandez and Brett Caldwell remained ghosts. The only new lead came from an unlikely source, a retired Colombian drug runner arrested on unrelated charges who claimed to remember the American DEA agent who'd gone into business for himself. He was smart, the old criminal told investigators, knew our routes, our codes, our people, helped us for almost a year before that pendejo Miguel got greedy and tried to cut him out. The American solved that problem permanently. According to the Colombian, Tyler had taken not just the $250,000 from that final deal, but had been skimming from shipments for months. By the time he disappeared, he might have had over $1 million, enough to disappear forever, the investigators noted, especially in 1992 money. The story gradually faded from the news cycle, replaced by more current crises. The DEA quietly closed their internal investigation, officially concluding that Agent Hernandez had likely been killed in the line of duty, his body lost in the Everglades. Brett Caldwell was listed as missing, presumed dead. Case closed, at least officially. Travis lived with the knowledge for another 6 months, checking his rearview mirror more often, varying his routes to the grocery store, keeping that shotgun close. But no one came. No mysterious phone calls, no strange vehicles parked outside his house. Gradually, he began to relax. Then, in May 2024, he received a package. No return address, but postmarked from Miami. Inside was a single item, a Polaroid photograph, aged and yellowed. It showed the cabin from 1992, but taken from an angle Travis had never seen. In the foreground, visible through the cabin's window, were 2 figures. The photo was too grainy to make out faces, but Travis recognized himself by the hunting vest. The other figure was Brett, and he was holding something, the package of money. Written on the back in faded ink, "You were right to keep quiet. Stay that way." Travis burned the photo in his backyard fire pit, watching the edges curl and blacken until nothing remained but ash. The message was clear. Someone had been watching that day. Someone had evidence that could destroy the life he'd built. 3 days later, the news broke. A body had been found in the Everglades, in an area recently exposed by Hurricane Rafael's damage. Dental records confirmed it was Brett Caldwell. The medical examiner estimated he'd been dead for approximately 30 years. But that was impossible. Travis had seen Brett swim away that morning, had watched him pull himself onto the dock, coughing up swamp water. Brett had been alive when Travis left, which meant someone had brought him back. The investigation exploded again. If Brett had been dead all these years, who had purchased that property in Costa Rica? Who had been living under his name? The DEA, FBI, and local law enforcement formed a joint task force. The media went into overdrive, theories flying about what had really happened in November 1992. Travis waited for them to come to him, but they never did. His name appeared nowhere in the files. Officially, he'd never been there. Tyler had kept his word about that, at least. But Travis couldn't stop thinking about the implications. If Brett had been killed shortly after the shooting, then Tyler had done it. Killed his own informant, taken his identity along with the money. The perfect disappearance. Everyone looking for Brett Caldwell, not knowing they should be looking for Tyler Hernandez living as Brett Caldwell. The Costa Rica property records were re-examined. The buyer's photo ID from 1993 was found in archived bank records. It showed Brett Caldwell, but the face was wrong. Similar enough to pass casual inspection, especially with the poor quality of early 90s photocopies, but definitely not Brett. It was Tyler. Had to be. The revelation sent investigators scrambling to Costa Rica, but the trail had long gone cold. The property had been sold in 2001. The corporation that bought it dissolved in 2005. T. Henderson had vanished as thoroughly as Tyler Hernandez had. Then came another breakthrough. The logbook found in the ruins contained coded references that, when decoded, revealed a second set of books. These books, hidden in a safety deposit box in a Miami bank that had been forgotten after the owner died in 1993, showed the real scope of the operation. Tyler hadn't just been skimming, he'd been running his own parallel operation, using his DEA credentials and knowledge to hijack shipments from rival dealers. The network thought they were losing product to law enforcement raids. In reality, Tyler was stealing it and selling it himself, building a fortune while maintaining his cover. The entry for November 14, 1992 was particularly telling. TH demanding larger cut, threatened to expose entire operation unless demands met. MS planning elimination. Must act first. MS Miguel Santos. He'd been planning to kill Tyler, but Tyler had known. Had arranged for the confrontation at the cabin, knowing how it would play out. Had used Travis and Brett as pawns in his game. Travis realized with a chill that he'd never been meant to survive that morning. Tyler's plan had probably included eliminating all witnesses. Only the unexpected arrival of backup Tyler hadn't called for, despite his claims, had prevented it. Someone else had called for that backup, someone who'd known what was really happening. Travis thought about Shane Mueller, the marina owner who'd warned him to stay away from the deep channels. Shane who'd gone bankrupt and disappeared shortly after. Shane whose boat had supposedly been seen near the cabin that day, though the tide charts proved it impossible. Unless Shane had never been there at all. Unless the blood evidence had been planted to frame him, to provide a convenient suspect if things went wrong. The pieces were falling into place, painting a picture of corruption and betrayal that ran deeper than anyone had imagined. Tyler hadn't been a cop gone bad. He'd been bad from the beginning, using the DEA position to build a criminal empire. In June 2024, another hurricane threatened Florida. As residents prepared for the storm, Travis received a visitor. An elderly man, well-dressed but walking with a cane, knocked on his door. "Mr. Beauregard? My name is Special Agent David Rourke, retired, actually. I was Tyler Hernandez's handler in 1992. Travis's hand moved instinctively toward the drawer where he now kept a pistol. "I don't know any Tyler Hernandez." "Please, Mr. Beauregard, I know you were there that morning. I'm the one who called for the backup that saved your life." Travis studied the man's face, looking for deception. "Prove it." Rourke pulled out a faded photograph. It showed a younger version of himself with Tyler and several other agents. This was taken in 1991, when we first inserted Tyler into the organization. He was a good agent then, idealistic, wanted to make a difference. What happened? What always happens when you send someone too deep for too long. He became what he was pretending to be. By the time we realized it, it was too late. He had too much information, too many connections. We couldn't just pull him out. So you let him run wild? We tried to control him, fed him information that would lead to arrests without compromising his cover, but he was always one step ahead. That morning at the cabin, I'd been surveilling him for weeks. I knew something was going down, but not what. When I saw you and Caldwell heading out there, I knew it was going to be bad. Why didn't you stop us? I tried. The warning call to your house? That was me. But Tyler had anticipated that too. He needed witnesses, people who could testify that he'd acted in self-defense when he killed Miguel. Travis felt sick. Brett? He killed Brett? Probably, though we could never prove it. Caldwell disappeared, Tyler disappeared, and we were left with a mess that took years to clean up. The agency buried the whole thing, too embarrassed to admit one of our own had gone that wrong. Why are you telling me this now? Rourke sighed, suddenly looking every one of his 70-plus years. Because I'm dying. Cancer. Few months left at most. And I've carried this guilt for 30 years. You deserve to know the truth. The truth, Travis repeated bitterly. The truth is that I was almost killed because of your agency's failure. Yes, and I'm sorry, more sorry than you can know. But there's something else. Tyler's still out there. Travis's blood chilled. You know where he is? No, but I know he's been watching, keeping tabs on everyone from those days. You, me, anyone who could identify him. That's why I came to warn you. With all this new attention on the case, he might decide to tie up loose ends. You mean kill me? It's possible. Tyler was always thorough. It's what made him such a good agent and such a dangerous criminal. After Rourke left, Travis sat in his living room for a long time, thinking. 32 years of secrets, of looking over his shoulder, of wondering when the past would catch up. And now it had. He made a decision. The next morning, Travis went to the FBI field office in Jacksonville. He asked to speak to someone about the Everglades drug case from 1992. The agent who met with him, a young woman who probably wasn't even born when it happened, listened with growing amazement as Travis told his story. Everything. The hunting trip, the cabin, the shooting, Tyler's real role, Brett's disappearance. He held nothing back, even admitting he'd suspected the money had been taken, but said nothing. I was scared, he said simply. 28 years old and scared for my life, so I kept quiet and tried to forget. But forgetting doesn't make it go away. The agent recorded everything, asked him to repeat certain parts, showed him photos to identify. Yes, that was Tyler. Yes, that was Brett. No, he'd never seen that person before. Mr. Beauregard, what you're telling us could break this case wide open, but it also puts you in danger. If Tyler Hernandez is still alive, still monitoring, I know, but I'm tired of running from shadows. Either he's out there or he isn't. Either he comes for me or he doesn't, but I'm done being afraid. The FBI offered him protection, but Travis declined. He'd lived his whole life in the open. He wasn't going into hiding now. The story broke a week later. Key witness emerges in 1992 drug corruption case. Travis's name was withheld at first, but in the age of social media, it didn't stay secret long. Soon, reporters were calling, showing up at his house, wanting to hear the story firsthand. Travis told them all the same thing. I was a young man who got caught up in something beyond my understanding. I survived through luck, not skill, and I've regretted my silence ever since. The renewed attention brought new resources to the investigation. Facial recognition technology, unavailable in 1992, was applied to old photos and security footage from Central and South America. Financial forensics experts traced money movements through offshore accounts, following a trail that had been invisible 30 years ago. And they found him. Tyler Hernandez, living under the name Thomas Henderson, was identified in Buenos Aires, Argentina. He'd been there since 2002, running a legitimate shipping business that investigators suspected was a front for money laundering. 61 years old, married to an Argentine woman, with 2 children who had no idea their father's real identity. The arrest was coordinated between the FBI, DEA, and Argentine federal police. On a quiet Tuesday morning in July 2024, they surrounded his villa in the suburbs of Buenos Aires. Tyler was in his garden, drinking coffee and reading the morning paper when they took him down. He didn't resist. According to the agents present, he simply said, "I wondered when you'd come." The extradition took months to arrange, but eventually, Tyler Hernandez was returned to the United States to face charges of murder, drug trafficking, corruption, and theft of government property. The list of crimes filled 3 pages. Travis was called to testify at the trial. He flew to Miami, where the federal courthouse was surrounded by media from around the world. The story of the corrupt DEA agent who'd lived free for 30 years had captured public attention. In the courtroom, Travis saw Tyler for the first time since 1992. The years had changed him: gray hair, lined face, a slight stoop to his shoulders. But the eyes were the same: cold, calculating, always thinking 3 moves ahead. Tyler watched Travis take the witness stand, and for a moment their eyes met. Tyler smiled slightly, an acknowledgement of sorts. Then his lawyer leaned in to whisper something, and the moment passed. Travis testified for 2 days, recounting every detail he could remember. The prosecutor walked him through the events moment by moment, establishing the timeline that would prove Tyler's guilt. The defense attorney tried to shake his story, suggesting Travis was lying to get a deal for his own involvement, but Travis held firm. "I was there, I saw what happened, and I've lived with that knowledge for 32 years. I'm not lying now." Other witnesses followed. The Colombian drug runner brought from prison to testify, former DEA agents who'd worked with Tyler, financial experts who traced the money. Slowly, methodically, the prosecution built their case. The defense's argument was simple. Tyler had been a dedicated agent who'd killed criminals in self-defense. Brett Caldwell had been murdered by the drug cartel, not Tyler. The money had never existed, or if it had, Tyler hadn't taken it. The whole thing was a conspiracy to frame a hero cop. The jury didn't buy it. After 3 weeks of testimony and 2 days of deliberation, they returned a verdict: guilty on all counts. Tyler showed no emotion as the verdict was read, but as he was led away, he turned to look at Travis one last time. His lips moved, forming words Travis couldn't hear but could read. "You should have stayed quiet." The sentencing came a month later. Life in federal prison without the possibility of parole. Tyler Hernandez, who'd lived free for 30 years on stolen drug money, would die behind bars. Travis attended the sentencing. He wanted to see it end, to have closure finally. As the judge read the sentence, he thought about Brett Caldwell, whose body had been found in a shallow grave, shot execution style. About Miguel Santos and his men, who, despite being criminals, hadn't deserved to be set up for death. About all the lives destroyed by drugs that Tyler had helped traffic while pretending to stop them. Justice delayed, but finally delivered. After the trial, Travis returned to his quiet life in Gainesville. The media attention faded, replaced by new scandals and crimes. The Everglades case became a footnote in DEA history, a cautionary tale told at training academies. But the story wasn't quite over. In September 2024, Travis received a letter forwarded from the FBI. It had been mailed from the federal prison where Tyler was being held. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a hand-drawn map. It showed the Everglades, marked with X's at various locations. At the bottom, Tyler had written, "There were others. These marks show where. My gift to you for your honesty. T.H." The FBI investigated the locations. They found 7 more bodies, all drug dealers or rivals who disappeared in the early 90s. Each had been killed execution style, like Brett. Tyler hadn't just been stealing from the cartels. He'd been eliminating competition, building his own network on the bones of others. The discoveries led to more charges, more trials, more life sentences to run concurrently with the first. Tyler Hernandez would never see freedom again. Travis kept one memento from the whole ordeal. Not the threatening photos or the maps, but something else. The morning of the shooting, before everything went wrong, he'd picked up a shell from the shore near the cabin. A lightning whelk, perfectly formed, about the size of his palm. He'd slipped it into his pocket and forgotten about it until he got home that night. For 32 years, it had sat on a shelf in his garage, a reminder of that morning. Now he kept it on his desk, where he could see it every day. A reminder that even in the darkest places, beauty could be found. That survival was possible. That truth eventually would surface. The Everglades continued to hold its secrets. The hurricane damage was repaired, new protections put in place. Tour boats full of tourists passed through the same waters where men had died, where drugs had been smuggled, where corruption had thrived. The guides told stories of alligators and birds, of the delicate ecosystem and the need for conservation. They didn't mention the darker history, the cabins hidden in the mangroves, the bodies beneath the water, the cop who'd gone bad, and the hunters who'd stumbled into his web. But Travis knew. And sometimes, when the weather was right and his joints didn't ache too much, he'd drive down to the Everglades. Not to hunt. He'd never hunted again after 1992. Just to remember. To stand at the edge of the wilderness and think about the young man he'd been, confident and careless, unaware of the danger lurking beneath the surface. The mangroves had grown back over the channel that led to the cabin. Nature had reclaimed what humans had corrupted. The lagoon where men had died was now just another patch of dark water, indistinguishable from 1,000 others. But Travis could still find it. Some things, once learned, could never be forgotten. On the 32nd anniversary of the shooting, November 15, 2024, Travis made one last trip to the Everglades. He hired an airboat tour, just another tourist among many. The guide, a young man who reminded Travis of himself at that age, pointed out gators and birds, told jokes about the mosquitoes being the state bird. When they passed near where the cabin had been, Travis asked the guide to stop for a moment. "Something special here?" the guy asked. "Just memories," Travis said. He took the lightning whelk shell from his pocket, the one he'd carried that morning so long ago. With a gentle toss, he sent it spinning into the dark water. It disappeared with barely a splash, sinking into the depths where so many secrets lay buried. "Making a wish?" another tourist asked. "Something like that," Travis said. As the airboat roared back to life and they continued the tour, Travis took one last look at the spot where the shell had vanished. The water had already smoothed over, showing no sign of disturbance. The Everglades kept its secrets, old and new. But some secrets, Travis had learned, were too heavy to carry forever. Sometimes, the only way forward was to let them sink into the dark water and move on. The tour ended, the tourists dispersed, and Travis drove home to Gainesville. His wife was making dinner, his grandchildren were visiting for the weekend, and life continued its ordinary rhythm. The past was past. The future stretched ahead, uncertain but unencumbered. Tyler Hernandez died in federal prison in 2027, 3 years after his conviction. Heart attack in his cell, alone and unmourned. His death made the news briefly, a footnote to a footnote. The DEA issued a statement reaffirming their commitment to rooting out corruption. The case files were sealed, archived, forgotten by all but a few. Travis lived another decade, passing away peacefully in his sleep in 2037 at the age of 73. His obituary mentioned his work at Disney, his family, his love of fishing. It said nothing about that morning in the Everglades, the shooting at the cabin, the trial that had finally brought justice. But his son, going through his father's papers, found a journal Travis had kept in his final years. In it, he'd written the whole story, every detail, every thought, every regret. The final entry, dated just weeks before his death, read, "The Everglades taught me that nature has a way of revealing truth, even if it takes decades. What's hidden will be found. What's buried will surface. Justice may be delayed, but it has a way of finding its path, like water through the mangroves. I was just one small part of that flow, caught up in currents I didn't understand. But I survived. I testified. I did what was right, eventually. That has to be enough." His son donated the journal to the FBI archives, where it joined the thousands of pages of documentation about the case. Another piece of history, preserved but largely forgotten, waiting for some future researcher to discover and wonder at the corruption and courage, the greed and fear, the choices made and unmade in the swamps of South Florida in 1992. The Everglades endures, the water flows, the mangroves grow. The secrets sink into the dark water, but sometimes, when conditions are just right, they surface again, demanding to be acknowledged, understood, resolved. And somewhere in those vast wetlands, in a lagoon known only to the oldest guides, the remnants of a cabin's foundation still stand, barely visible above the waterline. Birds nest in the ruins. Gators sun themselves on the broken concrete. Nature has reclaimed what was taken, healed what was wounded. It's a reminder, for those who know where to look, that even in the darkest chapters of human history, life finds a way forward. That truth, like water, always finds its level. That justice, however delayed, is still justice. The hunters who vanished in the mangrove thickets in 1992 were found, in a way, 32 years later. Not their bodies, Brett's was the only one recovered, but their story. The truth of what happened that morning, the corruption that had consumed them, the survival of one witness who finally found the courage to speak. That's how it ends. Not with violence or vengeance, but with truth, with testimony, with the slow, patient work of justice grinding forward, inevitable as the tide. The cabin is gone. The criminals are dead or imprisoned. The witness has passed on. But the story remains, a warning and a promise, that secrets buried in the deepest swamps will eventually surface, that corruption will be exposed, that truth will find its way to light, even if it takes 32 years, even if it costs everything. Even in the vast, dark waters of the Everglades, where so many secrets have been swallowed, truth rises. Eventually, always.